The torches in the Grand Council Hall flickered once, casting long shadows across the stone floor as Alpha Darius rose from his seat at the high table. Every Alpha, Beta, and Elder from the 7 packs fell silent. Zuri felt the shift in the air before she understood what it meant, a cold thread winding through the bond they'd shared for 3 years. "I have an announcement," Darius said, his voice carrying across the hall with the authority she'd once loved. His dark eyes swept the gathered wolves, then landed on her. No warmth, no recognition, just ice. Zuri straightened in her chair beside him, her fingers curling against the armrest. Something was wrong. The bond between them hummed with static, like a dying frequency. "The woman beside me," Darius continued, "is not fit to be Luna of the Ironwood Pack." Murmurs rippled through the hall. Zuri's breath caught in her chest. She searched his face, the strong jaw she'd traced with her fingertips, the full lips that had whispered promises against her skin. Nothing familiar looked back at her. "Darius." Her voice came out steady despite the tremor in her hands. "What is this?" He didn't look at her. He addressed the council instead, his broad shoulders squared, his presence commanding even as it shattered her. "I have evidence that Zuri has been conspiring with the Shadowmere Pack, passing information, betraying our borders, betraying me." The hall erupted. Alphas leaned forward in their seats. Elders exchanged sharp glances. Zuri felt the weight of 100 stares pressing against her skin like brands. "That's a lie," she stood, her chair scraping back against the stone. Her voice rose above the noise. "I have never." Silence. Darius turned to her now, and the coldness in his gaze made her stomach drop. "You will not speak in this hall. You have lost that right." He reached for her, and for one desperate heartbeat, she thought he might take her hand, might tell her this was some terrible test. Instead, his fingers closed around the silver chain at her throat, the Luna pendant that marked her as his equal, his partner, his chosen. He ripped it free. The chain bit into her neck before it snapped. Zuri stumbled back, her hand flying to the raw skin where the metal had scraped. Blood welled beneath her fingers. "I, Alpha Darius of the Ironwood Pack," he announced, his voice filling every corner of the silent hall, "publicly reject Zuri as my mate. I strip her of the Luna title. I sever the bond between us." The words hit her like a physical blow. She felt it, felt him tearing away from her. The bond that had lived in her chest for 3 years began to burn. Not the warmth of connection, but the searing heat of destruction. She looked down at her forearm where his mark had rested, the intertwined wolves that had appeared the night they'd completed their mating bond. The dark lines were glowing, pulsing with a sickly light. And then they began to fade. Zuri watched her mark dissolve like ink washed away by rain. Each second brought fresh agony, fire spreading through her veins as the bond unraveled thread by thread. She bit down on her lip hard enough to taste blood. She would not scream. Not here. Not in front of them all. "Escort her out," Darius's voice came from somewhere far away. "She is exiled to the border woods. She takes nothing. She speaks to no one." Hands closed around her arms. 2 enforcers she'd trained with, wolves who'd called her Luna just that morning. They wouldn't meet her eyes. "You're making a mistake." Zuri's voice came out rough, scraped raw by the pain still radiating through her. "Whatever you think you found, whatever someone told you, it's a lie, Darius. Look at me." He didn't. "Take her." The enforcers pulled her toward the great doors. Zuri's legs threatened to buckle, but she forced them to hold. She would not be dragged. She would not collapse. The pack members lining the walls parted to let them through. Some looked away. Some watched with hungry curiosity. A few, the ones who'd served under her, who'd brought their children to her clinic, who trusted her with their secrets, stared with something like grief. None of them spoke. None of them moved to stop it. The great doors groaned open, and cold night air rushed against Zuri's face. The enforcers released her at the threshold, stepping back as if she'd become something contagious. "You have until dawn to reach the border," one of them said quietly. "Marcus. She taught his daughter to read last winter. After that, any wolf who finds you on Packland has the right to treat you as a threat." Zuri turned to look back into the hall one last time. Through the sea of faces, she found Darius still standing at the high table. Still cold. Still distant. And beside him, half hidden in shadow, she caught a glimpse of another face. Kendrick. Darius's cousin. His lips were curved in something that wasn't quite a smile. The doors slammed shut. Zuri stood alone on the stone steps, her thin ceremonial dress, no protection against the mountain wind. Her arm throbbed where the mark had been, raw now, scarred, a wound that would never fully heal. She had nothing. No supplies. No weapons. No pack. The border woods stretched before her, dark and indifferent. She took her first step. The walk from the council hall to the edge of pack territory should have taken 2 hours. Zuri made it in 1, pushing her body past the trembling exhaustion that came with a severed bond. Every few minutes she had to stop and brace herself against a tree as fresh waves of pain rolled through her. The bond didn't die quickly. It died slowly, agonizingly, each thread snapping with its own individual sting. She'd heard stories of wolves who went mad from public rejection. She understood now why some simply stopped walking and let the cold take them. She kept moving. The forest grew denser as she climbed higher into the mountains. The path narrowed to a deer trail, then to nothing at all. Branches scraped her arms and caught in her locks, which had come loose from their ceremonial arrangement. Her bare feet, her shoes had been confiscated along with everything else, bled against the stones. But she kept moving. Dawn was still an hour away when she reached the old safe house. It had been abandoned for decades, a healer's cabin from the time before the packs consolidated. Most wolves didn't even know it existed. Zuri had found it 5 years ago, when she'd been a young healer searching for rare herbs. She'd told no one. Not even Darius. Now she understood why some instinct had kept it secret. The door hung crooked on its hinges, but the walls were solid and the roof didn't leak. Zuri stumbled inside and collapsed against the far wall, her back sliding down until she sat on the dusty floor. The pain came in waves now, cresting, receding, cresting again. She pressed her palm against her chest and felt her own heartbeat, wild and unsteady. She was alone. She was exiled. She was alive. That last thought rose up through the agony like a single clear note. She'd survived the rejection. She'd survived the walk. She was still breathing. Zuri closed her eyes and let the tears come. They burned against her cold cheeks, but she didn't try to stop them. Some things needed to be released before they could be survived. She cried until her body had nothing left to give. Then she opened her eyes and looked at the scarred patch of skin on her forearm where her mark had been. "You made a mistake," she whispered into the darkness. "And when the truth comes out, you'll know exactly what you destroyed." The safe house held her grief, and the night asked nothing of her. She would rest, now. Tomorrow she would begin to survive. The first week nearly killed her. Zuri learned to ration her energy like water in a drought. The safe house had a well behind it, still functional after all these years, but food was another matter. She set snares with trembling hands, using techniques her grandmother had taught her before the old woman died. The first 3 days brought nothing. On the 4th she caught a rabbit. She wept while she skinned it. Not from grief this time, but from relief so sharp it cut like glass. The pain of the severed bond settled into something manageable by the 2nd week, a constant ache rather than waves of agony. Her body was adapting. Her wolf, though wounded, had not abandoned her. At night, when the cold crept through the cabin's old walls, she let the shift take her. Fur was warmer than her thin dress. Instinct was simpler than thought. She survived. On the 15th day, a knock came at the door. Zuri froze, her hand halfway to the pot of herb tea she'd been brewing from plants she'd gathered in the forest. No one knew about this place. No one should have been able to find her. The knock came again. 3 short raps. A pause. 2 more. Recognition flooded through her. That pattern. That specific rhythm. She crossed to the door and pulled it open. Imani stood on the threshold, her silver locks pulled back from her weathered face, her dark eyes sharp despite her 70 years. She wore traveling clothes, practical boots, a heavy cloak, a pack slung across one shoulder. She looked at Zuri with the same measuring gaze she'd used when Zuri was 16 and begging to learn healing. "You look terrible," Imani said. Zuri's laugh came out broken and wet. "You found me. I taught you to find this place, child. Did you think I'd forgotten?" Imani stepped inside without waiting for an invitation, her eyes sweeping the cabin's interior. "You've been rationing. Good. But your snare technique needs work. I passed 2 empty ones on my way up." "How did you—" Zuri closed the door against the cold, her mind struggling to catch up. "How were you here?" "The pack." "The pack can go to hell." Imani set her pack on the table and began unpacking it. Dried meat, hard cheese, a loaf of bread wrapped in cloth. Zuri's stomach cramped at the smell of real food. "I may be old, but I'm not pack-bound. I never took their mark. They can't exile me from land I was walking before their grandfathers were born." Zuri sank into the cabin's only chair, her legs suddenly weak. "You shouldn't have come. If Darius finds out—" "Darius?" Imani's voice turned hard as iron. "That boy has made a mess of things. And now he's going to learn what that costs." She pulled one last item from her pack. A leather folder, worn at the edges but carefully maintained. She set it on the table in front of Zuri. "What is this?" "Proof that you were right." Imani's dark eyes met hers. "Open it." Zuri's fingers trembled as she untied the folder's bindings. Inside were letters, 3 of them, written in her handwriting. Or what looked like her handwriting. She read the first one, and ice spread through her veins. The letter detailed patrol schedules along the northern border. Specific times. Specific names. Information only someone with access to pack security would know. "I didn't write this," Zuri whispered. "I know." Imani pulled a second document from beneath the letters. "Because I found this." It was a receipt from a forger in the Eastern Market. 3 custom documents, commissioned 4 months ago. The buyer's name was listed as K. Ironwood. Kendrick. "There's more." Imani's voice was gentle now, the way it had been when Zuri was young and grieving her parents. "One of the border guards came to me 3 days ago. Tomas. He said he couldn't stay silent anymore. He saw Kendrick meeting with someone from the Shadowmere pack 2 weeks before you were accused. They exchanged something. Money or documents. He couldn't tell from his distance." Zuri's hands shook so badly she could barely hold the papers. Why didn't he say something at the council meeting? Because Kendrick threatened his family. Imani reached across the table and covered Zuri's hands with her own. Her skin was warm and dry, her grip steady. "But Tomas isn't the only one. Beta Micah has been asking questions. Quietly. He never believed the accusation. He's been tracking the scent trails they used as evidence, the ones that supposedly linked you to the Shadowmere messengers." "And?" "Doctored." Imani's jaw tightened. "Someone planted your scent in those locations. Used something from your private quarters, a hairbrush, old clothing. It's impossible to fake a perfect match, but they got close enough to fool anyone who wanted to believe the lie." Zuri stared at the evidence spread across the table. Everything she'd claimed, everything she'd sworn was true. It was all here. Documented. Witnessed. Undeniable. Micah found the forged scent markers this morning, Imani continued. He's ready to bring this to the council. There are 5 witnesses now, border guards, 2 healers from the clinic, and one of the elders who never trusted Kendrick. They're all willing to testify. The cabin felt too small suddenly, too quiet. Zuri pushed back from the table and stood, pacing to the window where gray light filtered through the dirty glass. Why? Her voice cracked. Why would Kendrick do this? He's Darius's blood. He had everything. He wanted more. Imani's voice carried no surprise, only resigned understanding. He wanted your position. He wanted influence over Darius. And he knew that as long as you were Luna, he'd never have either. You were too observant, Zuri. Too protective. He couldn't manipulate Darius with you watching. Zuri pressed her forehead against the cold glass. Outside, snow had begun to fall, dusting the trees in white. So he destroyed me instead. He tried. Imani rose and came to stand beside her. But you're still here. And now you have a choice. Zuri turned to face her mentor. What choice? Micah is preparing to present this evidence to the council in 4 days. The same council where you were condemned. Every alpha, every elder, they'll all be there. Imani's eyes were steady, her voice firm. You can let him do it alone. Let the truth come out while you stay hidden here, safe and separate. No one would blame you. What they did to you. No one would blame you for walking away. Zuri waited, because she knew Imani wasn't finished. Or, the old healer continued, you can come back. Stand in that hall. Present the evidence yourself. Let them see what they threw away. Her weathered hand came up to cup Zuri's face. Let Darius see what he threw away. The thought of walking back into that hall made Zuri's stomach turn. The memory of it, the torches, the faces, the cold authority in Darius's voice, still woke her in the night. But beneath the fear, something else stirred. Anger. Not the wild, desperate anger of the exile walk. This was different. Colder. More focused. The anger of someone who had been wronged and now had the weapon to prove it. If I go back, Zuri said slowly, they'll try to stop me. Kendrick will know I'm coming. Kendrick doesn't know about any of this. Micah has been careful. The witnesses are protected. Imani let her hand fall. But you're right, it's a risk. Everything worth doing is. Zuri looked at the evidence on the table. 3 forged letters. A receipt with Kendrick's initial. Witness testimony waiting to be heard. She thought of Darius standing at that high table ripping her pendant away, refusing to even look at her. She thought of Kendrick's half-smile in the shadows. She thought of every wolf who had watched her exile and said nothing. 4 days, Zuri said quietly. 4 days. She turned from the window, and her reflection stared back at her from the darkened glass, thinner than before, harder around the eyes, but alive. Still alive. Then I'll be there. Imani smiled, and for the first time since the council meeting, Zuri felt something that wasn't pain. She felt ready. The doors of the Grand Council Hall crashed open with a sound like thunder. Zuri stepped through the threshold, and the hall fell silent. Every alpha, every beta, every elder turned to stare. The same faces that had watched her exile 3 weeks ago now wore expressions of shock, disbelief, and, in some cases, fear. She walked through their silence like a blade through water, her steps steady on the stone floor. She'd changed. She knew it. They could see it. Gone was the ceremonial dress, the elaborate arrangement of her locks, the soft uncertainty that had made her approachable. In its place stood a woman carved by survival, her coiled hair pulled back in a simple twist, her clothes practical and dark, her posture straight as a spear. The scar on her forearm where Darius's mark had burned away was visible beneath her rolled sleeve. She didn't hide it. Let them see. This session is closed to exiles. Kendrick's voice cut through the silence. He stood near the high table, his position closer to Darius than it had ever been before. His light brown skin had paled at the sight of her, but he recovered quickly, squaring his broad shoulders. Guards, remove this trespasser. No one moved. Zuri kept walking. The leather folder Imani had given her was tucked under her arm, and she carried it like a weapon. I said remove her. Kendrick's voice rose, sharper now. Let her speak. The words came from the elder's bench, a woman named Aliyah, whose silver locks reached nearly to her waist, whose deep brown skin was lined with decades of wisdom. She'd been the one dissenting voice during Zuri's exile. She'd been overruled. This is a council session, Aliyah continued, her voice carrying despite its quietness. And any wolf with evidence of koru, crimes against the pack, has the right to present it. That is the law that predates any alpha's authority. Murmurs rippled through the hall. Zuri saw alphas from neighboring packs exchange glances. She saw Beta Micah near the back, his dark eyes steady, his jaw tight with tension. He gave her the barest nod. She reached the center of the hall. And finally, she let herself look at Darius. He sat in the alpha's chair, exactly where he'd been when he destroyed her. His strong features were drawn, shadows beneath his eyes that hadn't been there 3 weeks ago. He'd lost weight. The bond worked both ways. Its severing had cost him too, even if pride wouldn't let him show it. He stared at her like she was a ghost. Zuri, her name left his lips before he could stop it. She didn't acknowledge it. She turned to address the full council, her voice ringing clear against the stone walls. 3 weeks ago, I stood in this hall and was accused of treason. My mate, she let the word hang in the air like a blade, rejected me publicly. Stripped my title. Severed our bond. I was exiled to the border woods with nothing but the clothes on my back. She paused, letting the silence stretch. The evidence against me was compelling. Letters in my handwriting detailing patrol schedules. Scent trails linking me to Shadowmere messengers. No one questioned it. No one defended me. Her gaze swept the room, landing on face after face. Some looked away. Not one of you spoke. Because the evidence was clear, Kendrick interrupted. His voice had steadied, but Zuri caught the slight tremor in his hands. You're wasting the council's time with... I am not finished. The force in her voice silenced him. It silenced everyone. Zuri saw something shift in the way the alphas looked at her, a recognition of authority she hadn't possessed before the exile. Suffering had forged her into something new. The evidence was clear, she repeated, her voice quieter now but no less cutting. Clear and false. She opened the leather folder. 3 letters supposedly written by me. But I did not write them. She held up the first page, turning so the council could see. These were commissioned from a forger in the Eastern Market 4 months ago. I have the receipt. She set the receipt on the table before the elder's bench. Aliyah leaned forward, her sharp eyes scanning the document. The buyer's name, Zuri continued, is listed as K. Ironwood. The murmurs became a roar. Heads turned toward Kendrick, who stood frozen near the high table, his face a mask of barely controlled panic. That proves nothing, his voice cracked on the last word. Anyone could have used my initial. Someone is trying to... There's more. Zuri cut through his protests like they were smoke. The scent trails. The ones that proved I'd met with Shadowmere wolves near the northern border. She looked directly at Darius now, forcing him to meet her eyes. Those trails were planted. Someone used items from my private quarters, a hairbrush, old clothing, to fake my presence in those locations. Beta Micah confirmed this 3 days ago. Micah stepped forward from the back of the hall. His rich mahogany skin seemed darker in the torchlight, his usually warm expression replaced by cold professionalism. I can verify this, he said. The scent markers were inconsistent with natural contact. Someone went to considerable effort to create a false trail. I tracked the source materials to a storage room in the pack house, one that Kendrick has exclusive access to. The noise in the hall became deafening. Alphas were on their feet. Elders conferred in rapid whispers. Zuri waited, letting the chaos build, letting the truth sink into every witness. Then she raised her hand, and somehow, impossibly, they fell silent again. But the strongest evidence, she said, comes from those who saw what I could not. Tomas, please step forward. From a side door, a border guard emerged, young, nervous, but determined. His warm brown skin was pale with fear, but he walked to Zuri's side and faced the council. I saw Kendrick meeting with a representative from the Shadowmere pack, Tomas said, his voice shaking but clear. 2 weeks before the accusations against the Luna. They exchanged documents. I couldn't see what they contained, but the meeting was secret. Hidden. And when I tried to report what I'd witnessed, Kendrick threatened my family. Lies. Kendrick's composure cracked. This is all lies, fabricated by a disgraced exile trying to... I saw it too, another voice. Another guard stepping forward from the crowd, this one older, his graying locks cropped short. I was on patrol rotation that night. I didn't understand what I was seeing at the time. But I remember. As do I, a healer from the pack clinic, Naomi, whose gentle hands had helped Zuri train for 2 years. She emerged from the gathered crowd, her dark eyes fierce. Kendrick visited the clinic the day after his meeting. He took supplies without logging them. Supplies that could be used to manipulate scent markers. One by one, they came forward. 5 witnesses. Then 6. Then 8. Wolves who had stayed silent out of fear, now found their voices, drawn out by Zuri's courage. The hall transformed. What had been a closed session became a reckoning. The tide of public opinion, once so firmly against Zuri, crashed back against Kendrick like a wave breaking on stone. This is impossible. Kendrick backed toward the doors, his eyes wild. You can't believe this. She's manipulating you, just like she manipulated. He turned to run. 2 pack enforcers caught him before he'd taken 3 steps. Hold him! Aaliyah's voice rang with authority. The elder rose from her bench, her silver locks swaying as she moved to the center of the hall. Kendrick Ironwood, you stand accused of conspiracy against the pack, fraud against the council, and attempted destruction of a sacred mate bond. You will answer for these crimes. Kendrick struggled against the enforcers, his composure finally shattering completely. Darius, tell them, we're blood. You know I would never. Every eye in the hall turned to the Alpha's chair. Darius hadn't moved since Zuri began speaking. He sat perfectly still, his hands gripping the arms of his chair, his dark face carved from something harder than stone. But his eyes were fixed on Zuri with an expression she couldn't name. Horror. Realization. The dawning understanding of exactly what he had done. Darius. Kendrick's voice turned desperate, pleading. Cousin, please. Darius finally spoke. His voice was quiet, but it carried to every corner of the hall. I believed you, 3 words. They hung in the air like the echo of a killing blow. I believed you, Darius repeated, and I destroyed my mate because of it. Zuri felt nothing. She'd expected triumph or vindication, or at least satisfaction. Instead, there was only a vast, hollow silence where her bond used to live. She'd come here for justice. Now she would see it through. The council chamber held its breath. Aaliyah moved to the center of the hall, her presence commanding despite her age. The other elders rose to join her, forming a semicircle that faced both Kendrick and the Alpha's chair. The ritual of judgment, older than any pack, older than any Alpha's claim, had begun. The evidence is clear. Aaliyah's voice carried the weight of generations. Kendrick Ironwood conspired with enemies of this pack. He forged documents to frame an innocent wolf. He manipulated his own Alpha into destroying a sacred bond. She turned to face Kendrick, who had stopped struggling against the enforcers. His face was gray now, the arrogance stripped away. "Do you deny these charges?" Kendrick's mouth opened, closed. His eyes darted to Darius one last time, searching for rescue that would never come. I did what was necessary," his voice cracked. "She was making him weak. The pack needed nothing from you except loyalty." Aaliyah's words cut like winter wind, "which you were incapable of giving." She turned to address the full council. Every Alpha, every Beta, every witness who had gathered to watch history unfold. "By the laws that bind us, I call for judgment. Kendrick Ironwood is hereby stripped of all rank within the Ironwood pack. He is sentenced to permanent exile. No pack will shelter him. No wolf will aid him." Her silver locks caught the torchlight as she raised her hand. "Let the mark be taken." Two elders stepped forward. Kendrick screamed as they pressed their palms against his chest, not in violence, but in ritual. The pack mark that had lived beneath his skin since childhood began to glow. Then it began to burn. Zuri watched without flinching. She knew that pain. She'd survived it alone in the dark, with no one to witness, no one to care. Kendrick collapsed when they released him, gasping on the stone floor. The skin over his heart was scarred now, the mark gone. He was nothing. Less than nothing. "Remove him from Packlands." Aaliyah's voice held no mercy. "He has until dawn." The enforcers dragged Kendrick toward the doors. He didn't fight anymore. He didn't even look back. The hall erupted into noise. Voices overlapping, questions being shouted, the chaos of a world turned upside down. But Zuri stood still in the center of it all, untouched by the commotion, until she heard footsteps approaching. Darius. He'd finally risen from his chair. He walked toward her slowly, as if approaching a wounded animal that might bolt. The distance between them felt vast, not the length of a hall, but the width of everything he'd broken. "Zuri." She didn't respond. She watched him come closer, noting the new lines around his eyes, the tremor in his hands that he couldn't quite hide. The bond was gone, but she could still read him. 3 years of loving someone didn't disappear overnight. "Zuri, He stopped an arm's length away, close enough to touch. He didn't try. "I don't have words. There are no words for what I did to you." "No." Her voice came out steady, cold. "There aren't. I was wrong. I was blind, and I was cruel, and I—" His voice broke. For the first time in their years together, she watched Darius's composure shatter completely. "I destroyed us. I know that. I know I can never undo it." The hall had gone quiet again. Everyone was watching. Let them watch, Zuri thought. Let them see this too. "But I'm begging you." Darius dropped to his knees. Gasps echoed through the chamber. An Alpha, kneeling before the woman he'd exiled. The woman whose bond he'd severed in front of witnesses. The woman whose life he'd tried to erase. "Forgive me." His voice was raw. "Let me rebuild what I broke. Let me earn back what I threw away. The bond. We could try again. Start over." "No." The word fell between them like a stone into still water. Darius flinched as if she'd struck him. "Zuri, you stood in this hall and called me a traitor." Zuri's voice didn't waver. "You ripped my mark from my arm while I begged you to listen. You exiled me to die in the cold. And you didn't even watch me leave." She stepped closer, looking down at the man she'd once loved more than her own heartbeat. "I survived because I'm stronger than you ever knew. I found the truth because I refused to let lies define me. I came back because I deserve justice, not because I need you." Darius's eyes were wet. Actual tears, trailing down his face. She'd never seen him cry before. Not once in 3 years. The bond is gone, Darius. You killed it, and I won't resurrect something that was murdered so easily. She held his gaze, letting him see every ounce of the steel she'd forged in those weeks alone. I don't forgive you. I may never forgive you. That is your consequence to carry. She turned away from him. Zuri, please. The council has more business. Her voice cut through his plea. She addressed Aaliyah directly, her spine straight, her head high. Kendrick's actions exposed a weakness in this pack, in how accusations are handled, in how justice is served. If I had been given the right to present evidence in my own defense, none of this would have happened. Aaliyah nodded slowly, her eyes thoughtful. What are you proposing? A tribunal. Zuri faced the gathered alphas, the betas, the elders who had all watched her fall and now watched her rise. A formal body to investigate accusations before judgment is passed, to ensure that evidence is verified, that witnesses are protected, that no wolf is condemned on lies alone. She paused. I would lead it. Murmurs rippled through the hall, but these were different from before, curious rather than hostile, considering rather than condemning. You would remain in the pack? An alpha from a neighboring territory spoke up. After everything? I would serve the pack. Zuri's voice didn't soften. Not any alpha, not any bond, the pack. Because justice matters more than my pain. Aaliyah exchanged glances with the other elders. A silent conversation passed between them, decades of trust and understanding communicating in moments. The council accepts. Aaliyah's voice rang with finality. Zuri will lead the Pack Justice Tribunal, answerable only to the Elder Council. Her authority in matters of evidence and accusation will supersede individual alpha discretion. Darius, still kneeling, made a sound, half sob, half laugh, something broken beyond repair. Because they all understood what this meant, Zuri would have power, real power, power that didn't depend on his mark or his bond or his love, power she had earned through survival and truth. And he would have to watch her wield it. Zuri turned back to face him one last time. He looked up at her from his knees, and she saw the alpha mark on his forearm, the Luna symbol that had once matched hers. As she watched, it began to glow. Then it began to fade. The hall fell absolutely silent. Every wolf understood what they were witnessing. A Luna mark didn't fade on its own. It faded only when the bond was completely, irrevocably dead, when both souls had released each other. Zuri felt nothing. That was how she knew it was truly over. Stand up, Alpha. Her voice was quiet now, almost gentle. Your pack needs you. Whatever you are without me, they need you to figure it out. She walked toward the great doors. The crowd parted for her. Not in rejection this time, but in respect. Wolves lowered their heads as she passed. Some reached out to brush her shoulder, her hand, offering acknowledgement of what she'd endured. At the threshold, she stopped. The pack hall stretched behind her, filled with faces that had watched her fall and now watched her rise. Darius remained on his knees in the center, his faded mark visible to everyone, his grief stripped bare. Ahead, the night waited, cold and dark, but no longer hostile. She had a place here now, a purpose, a power that belonged to her alone. Zuri lifted her chin. She walked out of the hall with her head held high. Behind her, the first wolves began to bow. The doors closed softly. The torches burned on. And somewhere in the night, justice breathed easy at last. If this story stayed with you, subscribe and stand with our pack for the next one.